Hello, Diminishing Returns listener. I want to play a game. Be it through wires connected to your head, or simply through vibrations in the air. Your ears are currently being filled with the audible pompousness that is Diminishing Returns. You're so concerned with the opinions of others that you have neglected your own voice. And now, unless you're able to find and press the stop button within the next 2 hours, you'll be forced to listen to 3 idiots talk about the entire Saw franchise in excruciating detail, followed by pitching their own dreadful ideas for Saw sequels. As added penance, you will have the following films spoiled for you: Saw, Saw 2, Saw 3, Saw 4, Saw 5, Saw 6, and Saw 3D. Listen or stop. Make your choice. Alan. Alan.
Yes.
Saul.
Did you need a lozenge?
Saul.
You're right. Hello?
The pair of you take great joy in belittling other people's artistic endeavours, but
Yeah, we do.
if the shoe were on the other foot, what would...
Oh no! He's gonna chop our feet off.
So next to you is molten celluloid, and you must choose whether to pour it on your eyes or your tongue. You have 40 seconds to decide.
Can I pour it in my ears as a sort of shaky metaphor about making people listen to podcasts where I talk about film?
Oh, that would have made
That
more
doesn't really
sense,
hold
wouldn't it? Here we all are, and we're going to be talking about the Saw films in anticipation of Jigsaw, the 8th film in the series after a, 7-year hiatus?
The unnecessary and unwanted remake.
Is it a remake?
It's not a remake.
Oh no,
it's
sorry,
a sequel.
Continuation.
Reboot?
Yeah,
it's sort of like
supposed
one of the... It's going to be one of the sequel-y reboots, isn't it?
Yeah. It's kickstarting the franchise once more, but
Yes.
I suppose to dive right in, it's quite a notable franchise because they put out a film a year for 7 years running, which is quite remarkable. And I must say, I do.
Woody Allen did it for about 35 years. And he won 8 Oscars.
I do wonder what the Saw franchise might have been if they, taken a little bit of time to put a bit of effort into each one instead of just madly rushing it out to meet a deadline. But
Well, it does seem to be like the whole thing was being plotted, and like certainly by the time they got to like Saw 4, they were planning what Saw 6 was going to be and how this all stuff was going to continue.
This is something I was going to bring up at some point. I just may as well be now that those last films, certainly from 4 onwards, definitely, maybe even 3, it feels like watching a TV series.
Yes.
it is a
feels like
shitty soap opera, but with gore.
It's down to the acting quality for part of it, definitely, but also that continuation of a series it's not a kind of here's a complete plot, but there's a cliffhanger that's going to pull you into the sequel. It's just a continuing story. It's like here's the latest chapter.
You've even got the filler episodes in there as well.
Yes.
Purely functional chapters that take you to the next point in the story, but.
Yeah, very unusual, I thought, for a film series. And bear in mind, I watched all these within like a week, basically. And I was watching like the 6th film going, who's that? I can't remember. What's guy?
Yeah.
Did he get trapped? I can't remember. So how are you supposed to remember like year to year?
Should we give a brief overview of the franchise, actually, for anyone who hasn't seen any of them and somehow doesn't know what they are?
The concept is you wake up, or the character wakes up, they're in some kind of horrific trap in which they have to release themselves theoretically through some sort of retributional way as a way that will judge the way they've lived their lives. And they're supposed to learn a lesson from it.
It's usually a sort of Rube Goldberg-esque machine that's sort of like, oh, if you if you if you pluck enough hairs out of your head to make this machine happy, then it won't skin you alive in a minute or something like that. They're usually pretty stupid,
but they're often related to. It's sort of like Seven.
Yeah, it's
usually
like
a relation to.
You were a barista, so let's see how you like being beaten with a bar on your wrist.
That's weak even by Saw standards.
It's the kind of
it would be at least like you have to drink like 8 gallons of coffee in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then sort of concurrent to that is a sort of ongoing police procedural saga in which they're trying to catch the killer. And then a lot, very, very, very twisty-turny plots in terms of who is on what side and who's double-crossing who. And lots of sort of callbacks to other things that don't quite
I was going to say they're not even entirely chronological. There's a lot of flashbacks. And
it gets very confusing. Especially when you're 5 films in and you just don't care anymore. You're not watching properly.
I can't imagine how it must have been going to see these. Like, if you just saw them in the cinema once a year, like going back year after year, I'm not surprised the whole thing like died because. I mean, God, like you say, I watched these weeks apart.
It didn't die for lack of enthusiasm, I don't think.
The sixth one was a noticeable flop compared to the other ones. And it was shortly after that one was released that Should we talk about how it started, the first one?
Yeah, do you know the background? I know there was something with a short film.
Well, that's it. I understand it was a short film that obviously got enough attention that they used that to then get funding for feature, I guess.
Well, what it actually was that the director and the writer, they went to production company for money for a feature version, and the company weren't sure about investing in this new talent. So they said, well, okay, go away and make a short and sort of show us what you have in mind. Cool. So they went away, and in the scene in the first film, the reverse bear trap, probably the most famous Saw torture device. That scene from the first film, they pretty much just did that. And the writer who stars in the film anyway, he was in the short, he was the one with the reverse bear trap on. It's more or less the exact same thing, and then it's cutting to him smoking a cigarette and talking to a policeman about how everything went down. But it's all the puppets saying, like, Adam, you must rip a man apart to free yourself and whatever. And then on the basis of that, they got funding for the feature film. Was supposed to go straight to DVD, but then the feature got attention at some festival and eventually got a theatrical release because it was like super low budget. Like, it's one of those like $1 million. It's a bit of a Paranormal Activity sort of Blair Witch low budget horror thing that explodes.
Yeah, I like that about it. And in fact, my introduction to Saw was it became a big sort of thing that everyone was talking about, and it was just this shitty horror gore film, and I was like, bollocks to it, I'm not interested in that. And then several years later, or maybe a few years later, I eventually got round to watching it. And my response was very much, there's a lot more to this than I thought. This is actually more interesting and it's a nice little concept. I thought it was just going to be stupid gore. And there's actually not that much gore in the first one.
No.
And my feeling was, this is like a plucky, low-budget film that's come good. And that makes me a lot more forgiving of the flaws in it. And I am very much like, okay, well, it's a little bit, the acting's shit. The directing's a little bit raw. It feels like someone who's not that experienced, but...
it feels like a 13-year-old playing with Windows Movie Maker who's how to do some effects.
And I do love it, and that's one thing I do like about horror films is that they do embrace low budget very well. And I love that it's the bulk of that film is set in that one room, and then all the sort of outside stuff, it is just like there's a bedroom set, there's a hospital room set. You know what I mean? It's very simple. It's all very studio based. It feels low budget, but I kind of like that.
I think that's one of the real weaknesses of the film is that it's pitched like a bottle episode. It's pitched like you're in this room for 90 minutes, but then they keep going outside of it to police stations and things, which completely ruins that concept.
But they stick.
And it
would
have been a much stronger, tighter film. I
just
think
set in that room.
Yeah,
I know what you mean. I did think that as well, but
because every time they step outside of that room, it's dreadful.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, it's like some of the sets are just, I mean, they look so bad. It's like when Cary Elwes is like, he's supposed to be in his work car park, and it looks like he's in like a wooden barn. It's really strange. And every room is sort of like 3 walls, and let's not discuss the car chase that takes place in that first one.
Yes.
Remember that?
What is it? Is that the one where it's just sort of like shaky close up on the face?
Yeah. It's literally like the car is obviously not moving, and Danny Glover's just like moving his hands around on the wheel. And
I kind of like that, because if it was someone trying to do something on the cheap, it wouldn't feel good. But if this feels like some young, new talent filmmakers who've thrown an idea together and they're making it happen.
Well, it was.
Exactly. And I kind of, I like that. I appreciate
James
that.
Wan, we should add, who we've spoken about before, and has obviously gone on to be a huge deal in not just the horror circuit, but Hollywood as a whole.
Yeah, he did a Fast and the Furious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's currently doing Aquaman for DC.
But yeah, basically my response to the first one overall was, oh, this is a lot better than I expected it to be.
Yeah, you know what, I don't actually mind the first one. I think me and Sol, I remember us having spirited discussion about it at university, because I think I remembered
Alan
liking
was
the
there
first
as well.
one.
I think it was the 3 of us.
I remembered liking the first one a lot more than I actually do. A lot more of it annoyed me in this most recent viewing, because I remember really getting behind the editing techniques.
Oh god,
some of the
I
tricks
cannot
last time.
stand the editing in these
It's
films.
really irritating. Yeah.
Well, this is the same to me as Resident Evil, I'll add. This is exactly the same sort of garish, let's just speed everything up and slow it down for no reason. But yeah, I cannot stand the editing in this film. It's for me, honestly, it ruins any sense of tension that would otherwise be in the film. And there's some points in this film that would be really effective and tense if they were just played properly, but then the camera goes and like spins round and sped up footage, and it just ruins it. And you feel like you're watching a 9 Inch Nails music video or something.
Well, this is the thing. I feel like we covered a similar thing in the Shallows episode. That there's not really that much story here, so we have to fill the time with slow motion and editing techniques and all that kind of stuff. So the Saw films mainly, probably about a good third of each film is just the camera whipping around someone screaming and like then zooming right in on their face, and then
which they do lay off in the sequels a bit, actually. Towards the end of the franchise, it's not quite as...
Well, yeah, they seem to be more interested in the police procedural stuff later on than the actual torturing.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that conversation as well. It was, I think it was both of you. I think the 3 of us were walking home from somewhere, and you 2 were basically saying how great the first Saw was.
I'm not sure.
And it was just the sequels that were bad. Alan certainly was. He was going, no, it's a good, just good. And I hated it when I first watched it. I absolutely hated it. I should add, there was this huge hype about the film when it came out. All these people saying it's this brilliant horror film. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I went in with the wrong kind of idea of what it was. But I think I knew what it was. I think I knew it was this kind of riff on films like Cube and things like that. People wake up in a room and don't know, I just thought it was dreadful. I mean, I've made viewing that. I've got a few notes that might give a better sense of what it is about this film that really aggravates me and fucks me off.
Well, I made notes for these films as well, and my very first note for the first Saw film, so this is the first thing that I thought to write down, was this handheld close-up cam is getting a bit overbearing. So it very quickly started to annoy me.
Well, that's similar to me, actually. My very first note is that it's a brilliant premise, and that's something I want to say. I think part of what upsets me so much with this film is that the concept is absolutely fantastic. In the right hands, this idea could be one of my all-time favourite films, but I just think it's executed so poorly here. But my first real note is basically the same as you, Alan. I say it's how it's made and put together that fucks me off. It's trying to be all snazzy and cool, but it just comes across as looking really cheap. I put it's Resident Evil all over again, in fact.
I don't think it's that good. I think it's a step down.
I've made a quote, a note of a line in the film here.
Right.
My name is very fucking confused. What's your name?
Oh, yeah.
I think this sums up the level of writing for dialogue and character interaction in this film.
I mean, would it have been better if there had been some actors to deliver the lines?
Yeah, that's another big part. Again, that's a huge part of why I hate this first film.
What's
I
wrong
mean,
with
The
Harry?
acting
I just want to.
appalling in this
Yeah.
film.
I mean, I've never been a big fan of Cary Elwes in general. I think he's got a certain.
Is he
thing
the little
can do.
squeaky guy?
No,
the
he's
doctor.
Dr. Gordon.
He's the one who's like he's like a bargain bin Jeff Daniels.
Oh, yes. Him.
That's not how I describe him, but yeah,
That's
I describe
exactly
him
how
as
I
that
describe
guy out of Princess Bride and Robin Hood Men in Tights.
He was in Liar Liar.
He
Yeah.
is
He's
he is the better of the two.
Oh yeah,
But he's
the
proper
But he's
actor.
he's the star name. Him and Danny Glover are the actors in this.
Yeah, he is the actor who feels like he's actually an alright actor, but he's being very badly directed. The guy he's
Yeah,
playing
that's it.
opposite is
The writer.
unforgivably bad. And
Well, he's
fact
the
that he is-
writer.
yeah, and what that shouldn't have been allowed to happen. Because he's
not
obviously
good enough,
in the
is he?
film because he's the writer, but he ruins it. He should not have been allowed to lead his film. They shouldn't have okayed that.
I like that. I like that he's gone, well, I've written it, I'm going to be in it, or you're not having the script. Because
Yeah, but
that's,
give him-
I mean,
let
Sylvester
him-
Stallone built an entire career on that basis.
Yeah,
and
but
it
Sylvester
worked out all right for
Stallone's
him.
actually a very competent actor, surprisingly. I mean,
Well, Sylvester Stallone's a good actor. He hasn't got much of a range, but he
he's
does that
good at
very
what
well.
he does.
This guy isn't good. And yeah, I think you're right about perhaps a more experienced director could have got more out of these people.
Just to kind of go through the plot as it happens, I suppose. So these two guys wake up in this dingy, dirty bathroom.
Yes.
It would appear, chained to the pipes. No idea of what happened, how they got there. They said they just went to sleep and woke up there. And then they have a bit of interaction with each other. My name's very fucking confused. What's your name? That sort of thing. And then they find a cassette tape.
No,
Yes.
there's a dead guy in the middle between them
Oh yeah, sorry. There's a dead guy in the middle of the room
who
just
seems to
kind
have
of set
shot
the-
himself in the head by the looks of it.
Yeah,
Because he's got a gun in one hand and a tape recorder in the other.
and they manage to get the tape and play it, and we are introduced to the franchise villain, the kind of mascot of the series, who's sort of been put up there with the likes of Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger and last week's Chucky and what have you. Jigsaw. I've had a lot of fans of this franchise get very angry with me actually for saying Jigsaw when I mean Billy the puppet, who's apparently called Billy,
Yeah.
because they're two separate entities. Even though, if you ask me, the puppet is not a character in its own right. The puppet is Jigsaw
It's
using a puppet.
Yeah, it's a representation of him because he doesn't want to show his face.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that so like people don't complain on the internet saying, yeah, it's Billy. So yeah, Jigsaw uses this puppet to conceal his identity. Well, he's a serial killer, except he's not a serial killer because he never actually murders anyone. He just lets people not save themselves, which is a line that's touted throughout the franchise.
Try putting that in a
Nice.
court of law.
Exactly. The idea that he's not a murderer. It's absolute bullshit.
I
It
was like
doesn't-
hearing it in the first couple of films. I was like, okay, fine, we're gonna grow out of this as the series goes on because it makes no sense, and like I don't understand how anyone watching this could think that Jigsaw is like, oh yeah, no, he didn't kill anyone, he's perfectly innocent.
Some of the games are games where a person has to choose which person dies, and
Yes.
there is literally no way to save everyone.
Yeah.
It's not even that he's made it too hard. There is literally no way to...
Yeah.
So if someone only saves one person, that doesn't mean they killed the other person. The person that kidnapped them, chained them up, and put them in this thing that's going to kill them, killed them.
A more general point I was going to make, how we're supposed to feel about Jigsaw, or John, as he sort of reveals to be, throughout the franchise. Because I think we're supposed to be on his side. We're supposed to sympathise with him for most of the part, but he's a complete nutcase who. And this first film
there's
straight
a complete
away
breakdown in logic every time he tries to justify what he's doing. It doesn't hold up at all. I mean, I think it must be said in the first film. Maybe we're not meant to sympathise with him so much. I think that
we don't really know anything about him, and even at the end, it's very vague.
Exactly. I think in the first film, he's just a horror. He's just a voice
the bad guy in the background. Yeah,
but I do think you're right. As the franchise progresses, you're asked to be on his side. Absolutely. Definitely.
Yeah.
But I guess I'll get into my issues with that when we get to those films.
But even in this one, the people that when we come out of that room and we start following Danny Glover and the police. The bodies they find are victims of Jigsaw. One of them's like a benefit cheat, and one of them's someone who attempted suicide. Like, these are the bad guys of the world that you've decided need to be judged. It's like, what's the motivation behind all this?
And one thing I'll say is he's an annoyingly theatrical serial killer. There's a lot of stuff where you wonder who it's for. I mean, the puppet, wouldn't just audio have sufficed without a puppet on the screen?
Well, it's weird that he feels the need to have the puppet and the pig mask. Like, that's a returning prop as well. And it just feels like a confused bit of branding.
It's really frustrating when he's rigged up, the puppet's going to ride into the room on a trike and its mouth's been rigged to move in time with the audio I've recorded, and it's like, this is a lot of work you're doing that could have.
Oh, what it must take
you could have set up another trap with someone else in this time.
I mean, the amount of money he must spend on renting out these warehouses is like entire districts of
talk about
facilities.
Talk about wasted potential and all that sort of stuff. I wish the last film had been someone gets him and puts him in a room, and they're like, "You fucking idiot! Look at you! Look at what you've done, you hypocrite! Look at all this bullshit that doesn't make any sense, doesn't add up."
Yeah.
Now, here, peel your skin off with this potato peeler.
More of a general thing, but Jigsaw himself is played by an actor, Tobin Bell. How do we feel about him? Because I like Tobin Bell. He was a villain in 24.
My note from the first film was, considering how well Tobin Bell's done out of these films, he's barely in this at all.
Yeah.
Which, in that first film, he's basically maybe one day's filming of him standing up with blood stuck to his head, and then day in the studio doing voiceover. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
I think that he is one of the best things in the franchise, but I find him a baffling choice, to be honest. I really don't. I don't think he's particularly charismatic. I don't think he's very interesting. It just feels like, even in that same ballpark, you'd sooner go for a John Lithgow or someone like that. And I'm sure they tried to get other people who turned it down before they settled on him. But he just seems like a very bland choice for a franchise leading villain.
I don't know if it's all about the voice.
And bear in mind what you see of him in that first film, and I presume they weren't thinking of how we're going to do this in the future.
Yeah, when you see more of him, it just looks like he looks like Eminem on his deathbed. It's just, it doesn't come across right. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
I haven't got a problem with that particularly. He's cause he's
like a really Slim Shady. Am I right?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
You can't stand up.
Again, another general note, if we're doing things, I think the concept behind this is very intriguing. I'm not convinced they handle it that well, but the idea that if someone goes through an experience where they have to make a conscious decision to live, like, I want to survive, that will then motivate them further in later life, because it's reaffirmed their desire to live, I guess. I like that as a concept, and I think it works as a single film concept, that this one kind of crazy guy does that, or puts people in that position. It doesn't work when you try to get into it too far.
Well, I find that really surprising that they really lean into that as a staple of the franchise, as the series, as it goes on. But I agree, it's an interesting idea and avenue to explore. It's a shame they didn't do a better job of it. Oh yeah, on that note of people having this reaffirmation of life and injection of vigor and what have you. I've made a note that we're introduced to one of his past victims in this film partway through, and it's a woman who had the reverse bear trap, as you
Amanda.
say, Calvin. Yeah, and so it's a bear trap that's on her head and rigged to snap open, kind of ripping her jaw open in the process if she doesn't.
Yeah, she wakes up in a room and there's a man like lying down in the corner, and he's got like an arrow on his stomach, I believe, and yeah, the key is inside him, and she needs to stab him open. And
the first question the policeman asks after she's done telling the story is, "Are you grateful, Mandy?" what kind of question is that for a policeman to ask? No, that's not even going to cross your mind. Are you grateful? But so you've been through this horrible experience. Have you found that you've had a reaffirmation of life, and that you wanna kind of make more of yourself now? That's just not. It wouldn't factor it. Maybe if she was doing the rounds on daytime TV talk shows afterwards, maybe that would come up. But I would think most presenters would be socially aware enough to see that might be deemed as a really offensive thing to ask.
You would at least phrase it differently. Phrase it more openly, like, "Oh, has this experience changed your point of view anyway?" Yeah, you wouldn't just go, "So are you grateful?"
It's just such a badly written film in terms of dialogue. It's unreal.
They were fresh out of film school at the time. I think there was never any expectation that this would go on to be a franchise. This was supposed to be like, oh, we've got money to make a straight to DVD low budget horror film. Hooray! I don't even think it had probably the executive influence on it. I think a lot of what they wrote is probably here on the screen.
Did you like the little kind of theatrical stage model he'd built of the bathroom? That
yeah.
I thought it was hilarious.
Really elaborately painted. Far more detail than necessary. Could have just been a bit of paper with like a square drawn on it. But...
Yeah, no, he's like he's an architect, isn't he? That's why he gets the warehouse space. I think they say in like the 4th or 5th one, he's like, "This is my new workshop, and this is where I'll do all my designs and all that kind of stuff."
Architects need a lot of space for that A3 sheet of paper they work on.
Well, I was wondering, did he build the bathroom that's in this warehouse? Because otherwise, I'm not sure what the logic would be of having this bathroom in this place.
With an 8-foot wide sliding door.
That's what I took it to mean. I took it to be he's built this set to look like a dingy used bathroom. And he's had to, presumably, paint the walls with like muddied water and what have you to make it look dingy and old. And it doesn't really make.
You know what really annoyed me actually, just while we're on the subject of bathroom? At one point they find a clue that they have to go into the toilet to find the key. And the first thing the writer character does is sticks his hand like up the U-bend, the gross, like horrible U-bend, and we get some really gross shots. And then the key's actually in the cistern. And it's like, the cistern is the first place you would look. Like, the clue is written on the cistern.
I quite like that, though, because they drew attention to it, because he's got his hands covered in shit, and he goes, "Oh, I should have looked there first." So, I don't know, I was alright with that as a little thing.
So then, there's a little gambit those two characters have, because they know they're being watched by a camera at this point.
Yes.
So they turn the lights off to talk in private.
Yes.
So they're making the assumption that, number one, there's no audio on the camera. Number two, it's not got any sort of night vision, thermal capabilities or what have you.
Well, and also they must believe that the person watching the video isn't going to be then suspicious when they turn the light back on and play act one of the characters dying.
And that and can I when he does that play acting, is that is that meant to be funny?
I don't know.
It's supposed to be him deliberately bad acting, but it's a bad actor doing bad acting.
But is it meant to be? It comes across like he is too insincere. The character can't take it seriously enough to do it without doing a joke of it, which ruins the point of it, because it's obviously doing it to make the guy watching them think that he's poisoned himself and he's dead. So that is the one point in the franchise where I genuinely don't understand what is supposed to be being conveyed, because the performances are that bad. Like elsewhere, it's just bad acting, but that is like confusingly bad.
Well, just in terms of, I guess, weak storytelling, there's also we have a flashback to the doctor talking about a patient, and the hospital orderly sort of goes in and goes, "Oh, his name's John," and it's like, and my note was, well, that hospital orderly isn't at all creepy and suspect. So,
well, actually,
and obviously then that hospital orderly becomes what we think is the villain. Then there is a twist, but it's like, why don't you just put a big fucking neon sign on his head saying, "Look at this guy! Look at this guy!" It's so...
Well, I actually quite enjoyed some of the mystery elements. I think there's a lot of suspects, like right off the bat. There's the creepy orderly, and there's Amanda, and then there's the police, and I like that we don't know immediately who the killer is. I think it was ruined for me because I knew who Tobin Bell was. He was a villain on 24, so all there is until the very end is a super quick shot of him. And I'm like, well, I guess he's going to be coming back later on. So
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe the mystery worked better for other people, but
yeah. So the iconic part of the film is towards the end, when Dr. Gordon basically realizes that he has a saw and it won't cut through the chain, but it will cut through his leg, and so he can get himself free if he chops his foot off, and that's the big iconic thing. Now I know this is very much in keeping with what I do, but I do need to point out that this is something that the Watchmen graphic novel did before, and Mad Max did before that. So it kind of annoys me that this film gets so much credit for the idea.
The problem I have with that is that the guy goes, "Oh, it's not to cut through the chains. He wants us to cut through our feet." That comes in about 4 minutes into the film. It's like that would have been a nice little thing later on when they're like, "Well, why have we got the saw? We tried cutting through the chains." Where they come to this realization later on. Where it's like, "Oh my god!" But so it takes all the tension out of it.
It's weirdly done, yeah.
So by the end of the film, it all starts to get a bit messy. We have one guy we think it's him, and then it turns out it's not him. At one point, it looks like Danny Glover, the cop, has done all this because he thinks the doctor is Jigsaw, and so he set all this up. And we're definitely meant to think that. It's definitely revealed as like, oh look, it was him all along. And then something happens where the orderly shoots a gun fighting with the wife. Danny Glover runs in immediately, like he was in the next room. And so I was like, okay, so he is him because he was waiting in the next room for something to happen. But then he's fighting with the orderly, and it got completely lost there. I didn't know what was going on. I thought Danny Glover was supposed to be the murderer all along. That's
my note here, is what could have been a tight, interesting thriller just turns into a boring, convoluted soap opera.
Yeah.
And very badly executed in terms of effects, acting, sound design.
And that's quite telling of the rest of the franchise in terms of, let's throw as many twists as possible at the end and don't worry about if it makes sense.
Yeah.
That is a recurring theme.
It's hoping that you leave the cinema just being like, oh, whoa, I didn't see any of that coming, without sort of working out the logic behind it.
What a twist. And at the end of this film, there is what a twist.
Yes.
Yeah, but then the very final twist, it was like, oh, it was the guy who had cancer. Is completely out of nowhere. It's like there's no setup for that where you go, oh, right, okay. In fact, it would be quite possible to not catch on to what it is at all, because the guy just sort of stands up and walks out.
I would say the big gasp reveal twist is the body, the corpse that's been in between them for the entire film stands up, and it was him all along, and he was just pretending to be dead, and somehow they didn't notice that he was breathing.
I love
hours.
it. They reference that in one of the later ones, don't they? Where he like has an injection or takes a pill, and he's like, "It'll slow down my breathing, so I won't even be noticeable." So.
It's like, what again? Why so theatrical? Oh, because he likes to have a front row seat to the murder. Then why doesn't he watch through the two-way mirror? Why is
he more comfortable?
He can't even he can't watch what they're doing. He can only hear what they're doing. He might as well be sat behind the wall listening.
It's irritating because the body on the floor doesn't really like. It's a mystery why it's there. Neither of them recognize the figure. So it's sort of like, well, obviously it's going to be a live person then, because otherwise this body has not factored into any other mystery or clue or.
There has to be a twist involved with the body because nothing's been done with it.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I think it's fair enough if you buy that it's there as setting the tone.
Yeah,
they know what's in store for them because there's a dead guy in the room with them, and so it's immediately very different to if they woke up in that room without a dead body in there.
I think I would have preferred it if he'd have been like chained up to another, or appeared to be chained up to another pipe or something, and then as if, we're not the first ones to be chained here. And
then the very final moments of the film are just a montage.
Yeah.
It's just this weirdly edited kind of see you next time kind of thing. Which makes me wonder, were they planning... At what point in the process did they know they were doing a sequel? Because they must have... It came out the next year, so they must have had an idea they were going to come back for another one before this hit cinemas. And that final montage feels edited almost from a film that had been shot, perhaps not knowing that it needed to set up an immediate sequel, because it's just some swelling music over footage that I don't know. So I hate the first film. I really hate it.
Well, considering how many things I've just picked out and slagged them off, I have a sort of affection for it because like I said, I think I forgive a lot because it feels like a low budget thing. They're scrapping it together, so I forgive a lot of things, and I think it's a great concept that in this first film they just about get away with. As soon as they try and expand it, it doesn't really work.
But as we say, they did pump one out a year, so
yes.
I guess we better move on swiftly to the next year's entry, Saw 2.
Yes, which I think this is the most classic version of what I think people think of a Saw film being, where it's a bunch of people, they're trapped in a house, the police are interrogating, Jigsaw himself is actually there. He has a lot of screen time in this one, and they're cutting back and forth. The Donnie Wahlberg's in it, and his son's in the house, and he's trying to find the thing, and they're going through various tasks and things inside this abandoned home, trying to get out.
And
I think it's just classic. This is what classic Saw is to me.
And again, this was one where a lot of things worked for me on this, and I liked it. There's still problems with it. But I think the concept is really nice. The sort of twist.
Well, I was going to say, I think
works.
conceptually this is great again, and it really winds me up that it's not done better.
Yeah, they've stuck with the tradition of mediocre actors.
The acting's better than the first film, though. Overall, I would say.
Yeah, but they're still not good actors.
They're not good, but it's compared to the first one. When you watch through the franchise, it's like, I can breathe.
And again,
now.
I think the writing lets it down slightly. The concept of those people trapped in the room together, they have to deal with each other. It's just Cube, isn't it? Except you've got this police procedural going on at the same time. But
Cube didn't the writing that, though, because obviously the Twilight Zone actually did.
But the writing lets it down because these characters are quite weak and they're all just complete arseholes. You don't like any of them. You don't want any of them to live. They're all played as these very stock characters. Like, you're the arsehole man. You're the arsehole woman. You're the quieter woman, but who's still an arsehole. Like, it's
with the exception of Amanda, who returns from the first film. But I mean, did you recognize her? I don't know. I don't know the actress from anything else. And
no. I mean, but in the plot of the film, she's like, she goes, "Oh well, I've been in one of these before," and then I twigged. And I work,
Yeah, I must admit, I really like the idea of bringing her back from the first film and putting her in a place with all like the person who's been through it all before.
Yeah.
Whether or not it really, because the twist is that she is working with Jigsaw because she's gone over to his dark side, and
his
she's there as
bizarre
a kind of plan, and none of that works at all.
God complex.
But I like the idea of bringing that character back and having a bit more continuity between films that wouldn't otherwise be
because Cary Elwes was certainly not coming back after big disputes he had with this quite minor miracle that they managed to get him back at all. But you'll notice that from...
I was going to say, what's all this?
Give us the goss.
Oh, he felt shafted because Saw was one of those classic low budget sort of, you'll be paid on the basis of, how much money it makes and all that kind of stuff. And I think he felt like he was conned out of a lot of money. So you'll notice that through Saw 2 to 7, you won't even see archive footage of him or pictures or anything. It's like he's just did not allow use of his image at all.
Good.
But anyway.
Good for him.
There's still...
Yeah, you make a little low-budget film, it ends up being a huge success. You're like, give me a little piece, let me wet my beak. I'll come back. Just pay him. Come on. So with this one, we get a new cop who is like a pretty standard cop character. But okay, so what we have the setup with the people in the room, which I quite like, and this is something they do. That you have basically one person or a group of people going through a trap journey and running concurrent to the police procedural stuff. That's the standard setup of these films. I think it works. I think it's quite nice. I think the cop stuff is a distraction from the interesting bit.
Yeah, I completely agree. I throughout this franchise, it feels as if the policeman procedural drama elements are there because they couldn't figure out how to get the film up to 90 minutes without them. And I must admit, I think the second film is one of the best instances of trying to incorporate two plots like that.
Yeah, because they are connected.
Better jobs at, because it's obviously the policeman's rushing to try and solve the case as it's happening, and
then the way the twist falls out works. It makes sense. It's quite a neat thing, which compared to the later films where none of the twists make any sense whatsoever.
And even this one has some, talking about the weird traps and things, this film still has some inventive, interesting traps for the people. There's the big pit of used needles,
syringes.
That someone has to dig through to find a key or something. There's the box that is designed so you can reach your hands in to get a key again, but then when you try and take your hands out, it will slice your hands off because it's built in a specific way, which annoyed me a bit because another person in the room could very easily have sort of lifted up the flaps and got her hands out.
That one didn't quite make sense because I'm not sure what the way to get out of that is. Like, what's the successful way of beating the trap?
Is it like, do you need someone else to hold the shards while you put your hand through?
It's not designed in a way that is very... it's not really designed to let you get out with your hands, but at the same time, you could easily hack it with two people on it at once. And also, a lot of these traps aren't designed to be you often have to sacrifice a body part to get out of there.
Yeah, but the point of that, I think, and with all those people, is that they are all selfish assholes, and so if they work together, they might be able to solve something, but they don't.
Exactly.
And that's what Jigsaw is relying on. That's what he's judging them on. But I'm all right with that. I'm all right with that. What I did like about that whole setup in that house is that every character has their own they have their own personalized trap and they have their own tape recorder, but we only see 3 or 4 of them because and I like the concept that if they'd gone in a different direction, it would have played out differently. Yeah. And I quite like that. I like that as a sort of the nebulous possibilities that were behind it, but this is the one that happened. This is the one we're showing. Because that fits in with what Jigsaw does in that there's many possibilities, but at the end, the result is still kind of the same. I quite like that idea. And they didn't signpost it too much. They just played it out nicely. It was all right.
Yeah, I think it's a really shit film, but I think it conceptually it's very nice. There's a lot. There is good in it. It's not just completely devoid of merit, and I might actually prefer it to the first.
Yeah, I think I probably do. I don't know. Like I said, this feels like a classic. This is sort of like how Friday the 13th Part 1 isn't really a true representation of what that series is. I think this is a true representation of what this series is more than the first one.
Okay, so the third one, my first note is me getting really annoyed saying there's just no plot. It's just a series of rehashed set pieces that are really bland and uninspired. I think the third film begins really badly, but it kind of halfway through shifts gear into a proper plot with the guy trying to make his way through these personalized traps. And I think once it gets into that mode, it becomes a lot better.
Yeah.
It's still not very good, but again, the recurring theme of these films is that the flashbacks with Jigsaw, the police procedural stuff, is absolute garbage, and the stuff with people making their way through the traps and rooms is generally far more interesting.
I mean, in this film, as again, one of my notes was, right, we've had about 3 false starts now. So is this because we have a sort of a someone in a trap straight away? Then we go back to the policewoman who's angry at herself because she didn't save not Marky Mark. And then she's at home and she blindly shoots into a cupboard for some reason. I don't know what sort of police training they get in America that's an acceptable thing to do. Just in what looks like a domestic apartment as well. Like presumably those bullets went straight through the wall into like the family next door. But anyway, then she gets killed. Or we don't see the killer, but she sees them and she goes like, "Oh my God, it's you," that kind of thing. But we already know who the killer is because we've seen it in the last film. We know it's Jigsaw and we know he's being helped by that woman. So where's the ambiguity there? Why are we playing with ambiguity? And then we set up this doctor who, again, is like a completely new character. And then we go, okay, so this is the main character. And then we get this guy who's in the trap. And I'm like, for fuck's sake, will we just start this film and get on with it?
And that's the thing, the guy in the trap is the main plot of the film. It just takes about half the runtime before you get there.
Well, for the longest time, you don't know how it's connected. So you think that Jigsaw has this doctor, and her task is you've got to keep him alive or your head's going to blow up. And happening concurrently is this guy going through these tests. There are other people in traps, and he has to help them out of it.
I really think a different edit of the film would help it so much to just establish that guy and his journey a bit earlier on. Yeah. Because at the start it feels like just disconnected series of events that don't really have any coherent.
Yeah, you could literally start the film with the guy, he's with his kid, they're about to cross the road, and it's a hit and run. It's like a huge moment, he's screaming, he's crying, there's a kid in his arms, and the driver just drives off, and he like looks him in the eye and then runs off. You know what I mean? You could have this great emotional moment.
The basic concept here of this, the core plot of him is actually quite a nice idea. Again, this guy's kid was killed in a hit and run, and Jigsaw has assembled all of the people this guy might want to blame for his loss, and he has to basically save them and choose whether or not to save them.
It's a hit and run, and it's like, I don't want to diminish the emotional impact of that for the guy whose kid it was, but that's not an evil person, is it? That's someone who, perhaps was speeding or something like that, but it's not someone who went out and go, I'm going to murder a kid today. And so does the punishment fit the crime,
You've also got the judge who gave the guy too light a sentence, even though he's, doing his job, following legal protocol. You've got the woman who didn't stick around and help adequately enough or something?
No, she was a witness, but she didn't come forward, basically. I think that was the idea. And so if she'd said, oh yeah, that guy definitely hit him and then ran off. But again, like, they knew it was him. The idea was not that he was guilty or not, it was that he didn't get a heavy enough sentence. So like it didn't quite make sense, did it? It didn't quite have enough impact to justify what they were doing.
It's a good broad concept. I just wish they'd ironed it out a bit better.
And there's another problem here that that runs right through this entire franchise. He makes the decision, right, I'm going to save this person. Okay, I'm going to do the action that hurts me but is sacrificed to save someone else, or whatever the concept is of that machine. But then they don't quite make it in time and they die anyway. And it's just like, if you've made the moral choice and then the person dies anyway, then what's the point of this? The idea is that they go through with it, and all the way through it we're going, well, I know he's not going to save this person because then he's going to get just stuck with this person. So this person has to die, otherwise it's a loose end. And that's what happens in this film, in Saw 3, because he saves the judge, he chooses to save the judge. And then we've got this judge there that's just knocking about being annoying in the background. It's like, all right, now we have to get rid of him somehow. And then that completely undermines everything they do.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Basically, he has to take a bullet to save this guy. The trap obviously isn't well designed because he can manage to get the key out and just angle himself so it doesn't, that when the gun fires, it doesn't hit him, which immediately is completely ruins the point of it. And then just to make that kind of valid, it shoots the other guy in the face and kills him, which just completely undercuts any kind of moral justice we're trying to do here.
The traps really wind me up in these films throughout, to be honest. There's so many instances where there are big cogs on display, and if they just took their T-shirts off and shoved them in the cogs, it'd stop the machine being able to move. There's loads of stuff like that throughout.
Meanwhile, we have brain surgery being performed on Jigsaw, which is the only sequence in the entire series that really made me wince. I found that whole... it's like 10 minutes of... Brains creep me out. It's really weird. The whole 10 minutes is... something that really annoys me around this point in Saw 3 is that Jigsaw talks about his life's work. He only really started doing this torture thing recently, didn't he? Like when we're supposed to believe he was a normal bloke and then he got cancer and then decided he
broke
God.
bad.
Yeah.
I do like some of the traps in these films, but it's not on that's gory and horrible. It's just like, that's inventive, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And the first one in this film that I like is the ice room. That's the first point where it doesn't just feel like a rehash of something they've already done. It feels like a new concept. And that's where it's basically in a big freezer. There's a woman sort of chained up to the middle of the room, naked, being sprayed with water that will, freeze on her, and then sprayed again and it freezes, and building up a big coat of ice around her, which is it's a really quite inventive way to do things, and it's quite horrible. The last half, when we've got this guy going through these rooms that are tailored to the death of his child and what have you, I like that more than anything in the first two films. And it's just the first half of this film being such a dry hump, just just killing time, basically, that brings it down and makes it the worst film so far in the franchise. But it's a mixed bag, I guess.
Well, one of the weakest points for me in this film, and for some of the later films, is the character of Amanda.
Oh, God, yeah, I hate Amanda.
Because
she's very prominent now.
Yeah, it goes into so many twists and things, and she's not that great an actor, and I don't know, and
she's not a particularly interesting character. She's an interesting concept that Jigsaw would have a follower, but it's done so cartoonishly badly. Yeah.
Well, and then it's just diluted as the films go on, because he's got all these apprentices. He really does have like a Jigsaw team.
And I hate
the amount of people.
I hate the concept that everyone he touches that survives is, because at this point it feels like every one of his survivors comes round to his side and is like, I'm so glad he did that. I'm on your side, mate. I'm woke now. You've lifted the wool from my eyes. I've taken the red pill. What a fucking bell end.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I like, because his one big success story was Amanda, and she's a total nutter. In the later film, in the last film, there's this idea that there is like quite a lot of survivors, but they never show us people surviving. They just show us people dying.
Yeah, Jigsaw does a lot of stuff with like cassette tapes, and I think this one actually feels like, okay, they are setting up a whole series here. There's one point where he pours wax on a tape, and they never go back to it. Yeah. And I can only assume that it's the tape that they find him in his body at the start of the next one. But how difficult would it be to rig these tapes and videos and doors opening and closing?
It really annoys me that, because they're little tapes, but they're pretty big to try and swallow.
Yeah.
You better be counting on dying in the next few hours, because otherwise you're gonna clog up your insides or pass it and have to do it again.
I just love that he's got a tape ready for every instance as well. Like, as soon as Jeff has slashed his throat, he lifts up a tape and starts playing it. And it's like, what if Jeff hadn't done it? And what if something else had have happened in the room? Like, I don't know, something with Amanda or whatever.
Now, the fourth one opens with them doing an autopsy on Jigsaw.
I actually really like this, because I have to admire them for killing off the main villain halfway through a series, and maybe I'm just too conditioned to the standard slasher format. Because to be honest, like, even halfway through the autopsy, I kept expecting his eyes to, like, open up or something. I'm just so used to, Jason isn't really dead and he's going to come alive in the middle of the autopsy. And I quite like it. I think it differs, makes the franchise different from other similar horror films.
I agree to a point, but they've clearly planned it out in a way that, for all intents and purposes, he is not dead and he's just...
Well, he is dead.
Yeah, but they've planned it out so that they're going to keep finding things he's set up and tapes he's left behind, and he's going to... He might as well still be alive as far as the bulk of the films are concerned. It doesn't really change anything about the dynamic of how the films work, because the same killer rooms are still going to play exactly how they always have. He's presumably just got a huge archive of hundreds of tapes sat waiting to go, and he hasn't been carrying out the dirty work himself for most of these anyway, has he? It's his fault.
No, it's... This is the one where we get a proper introduction. He was in the third film, Costas Mandalore.
God. The new cop.
He kind of looks like Sylvester Stallone if he had a baby with Gary Shandling. This kind of ropey...
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
This is the point, I think, in Saw 4. This is the point where it starts becoming a TV series. Very definitely. Obviously, this thing set up in Saw 3.
Absolutely.
But there's just a change in tone. It's something about the way it's filmed. And it looks very studio set all the time. But I did get a bit excited at the beginning of Saw 4 when they were doing the autopsy scene, because it was just unnecessary detail of all this autopsy stuff. And they cut his brain out. And I was like, are we going to get a Frankenstein Jigsaw? Is that where we go with this? Which would have been fantastic.
That would have been amazing.
That's the way you go with the franchise, but unfortunately not.
What really annoys me is that so they find this tape and he says, the games have just begun. No, they haven't. You're literally halfway through.
But are they? Because time is not linear in the world of Saw.
No, it isn't. Because Saw 4 happens at the same time as Saw 3.
This film has quite a cool cold opening trap.
I can't remember what this one is.
This one is a guy's been blinded. His eyes have been sewn shut or something.
Oh, I hated this.
And a guy's mouth's been sewn up so he can't speak, and they have to...
So naturally, you go and kill the thing that's nearest.
They have to work to... Well, no, it really annoys me. I like the puzzle. I like the concept. And I think it could have been a really interesting little... These two guys have to work together, figure out a way to make this work. And that's obviously the idea behind the trap. I think they ruin it because almost instantly it just deteriorates into the two of them having a fight.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't address the fact that just because your mouth's been sewn up doesn't mean you can't communicate. You can still speak, you can still talk like this.
Well, it doesn't make any sense because immediately as the trap is done, the guy rips open his own mouth anyway. So...
But I think the basic concept of the trap's quite good. This is pretty much the only positive thing I have to say about this film, so I'm getting it out of the way now.
This throws in a classic police procedural trope here. The local cop is doing his job. And in comes the arrogant FBI agents who think he's a small town cop who doesn't know what
he was just 3 days from retirement.
He's too old for this shit. They had no ideas, no original ideas here. What can we do? Let's get Johnson & Johnson in.
My notes now are just the words "so boring" over and over until we get to the hair machine. So wake me up when we get there. And
I made a note about that particular thing as well, because it's this woman she's like attached to a machine and it's gonna like rip her hair off and completely scalp her. I've seen this exact thing done in another film, Piranha 3D, where a woman gets her hair like caught in a propeller sort of thing. And there it's sort of funny, and I was like, yeah, that's cool. And here it's just miserable and dull.
Unpleasant.
Yeah, very unpleasant.
And annoying, because this is the point where the guy remembers halfway... Well, this is it. This is the bit halfway through. The guy remembers he's got a gun, and he hasn't tried using it yet, and he tries shooting the cogs on the machine. And this is another instance where he could very easily take some clothing off and wedge it in the machine, and that would have stopped it being able to work. And shooting the machine doesn't work, but he could have shot the hair, which... Even after that, he could probably try and cut through the hairs one at a time. If he's got his keys in his pocket, he could start sawing through the hair. Or it doesn't really work. That's the only note I've made about this film, other than that.
One more thing that I'd like to talk about, because they try to give a reasoning for Jigsaw's whole pig mask thing here. By expositing that he decided to kill people in the year of the pig. And it's also in this one where it's established that he had a wife, who we haven't talked about. She lost the baby that she was pregnant with as a result of this junkie guy.
Yeah, we establish her as a character now, and she's in it for the rest of the franchise.
Dreadful actress. I think she's really bad. And she is exactly like, she just looks like a soap star.
What you were saying about it becoming a TV show at this point, this is the filler episode. I really think this film is just getting from point A to B. It's just filling in the blank between Saw 3 and Saw 5. There's no film here. It's absolute horse shit. It's a series of events that are very loosely connected and don't really have any entertainment value, frankly. This is the low point of the franchise for me. I think this film is pretty unforgivably bad.
Yeah.
For Saw 5, though, I only made one note, and I just said worst of the lot. So... I think that Saw 5 is... I think that Saw 5 is worse.
I think Saw 5 is a huge step up from Saw 4.
Oh, good lord. I didn't even enjoy the... I think this is the first one where the torture subplot to all the police procedural stuff has absolutely no relevance to anything else that's going on. You just have these 5 people who wake up and they're going through...
Oh, is this the real estate one?
Yes, where there was like a journalist who was investigating, and they... What did they do? They set a fire in a building and some people died or something.
And the characters are really poorly written and thought through.
Yeah, they're really, really bad.
Don't interact like real human beings.
Now, so.
Yeah. But I would much rather watch their story than the police stuff. I find what they're doing way more interesting than anything else going on. And
we have the FBI agent like following Costas Mandylor around. He's like on the track of him, and that's sort of it, really. Is this the one that ends with him getting crushed?
Yeah, but this is the one where I could never quite figure out which one was which.
Well, you know, on that note, I watched this with my partner, and she wasn't really paying attention. And at the end of the film, when you see him looking at the guy getting crushed, she said, "Hang on, what? Why was he looking at himself getting crushed?" I she thought it had gone into some weird art house territory of.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Looking up and seeing yourself as you die.
There's all this big hubbub about, oh yeah, we finally caught Jigsaw. Oh, we're going to give this guy a medal. Blah blah blah. But then the other cop who had to stab himself in the throat with a pen, he knows, like he sees Jigsaw's dead body, and then he wakes up in this trap with his head trapped in the water thing that was supposed to kill him.
Yeah.
So he knows that someone else put him in that trap, not Jigsaw, because he saw Jigsaw's dead body. So why are and he's a policeman, he's an FBI agent. So why are the police going, yep, Jigsaw's over. That's that wrapped up. We can put that one to bed. Thank you. Here's a medal.
Because they are terrible police in this town. The FBI, it's dreadful. It's like at the end of this, like it literally walls, in an Indiana Jones fashion, start closing and crush the guy to death, and it's like to get that to work, the hydraulics that would be needed to. Just check. You can't get hydraulics from. It must be a very specialist place you need to go for that sort of thing, and just check records. He's been buying all this stuff. Follow the address. I hated it. Absolutely hated it.
It is shit, but I think it's a step up significantly from the previous film.
So then there's 6.
Yeah, which had a better plot that works as a sort of...
I thought this one was a significant step up.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is a shame considering it's the lowest grossing of the franchise and the one that made them put the lid on it back when they did. This one felt like it had some real effort put into it.
Well, actually, I've just remembered something that we didn't mention. Saw, which one is it? Saw 5 is directed by the production designer of the previous Saw films.
Huh.
Oh,
Not the original Saw, but like after the. Basically, it's Darren Lynn Bousman's production designer. He's the director. And so he stepped up as director in kind of like a Jaws 3D sort of way. And then the director of this one, of 6 and 7, I think they did both of them, was the editor of the previous Saw films, who again hadn't really directed anything before, which I thought was quite interesting. Especially as these ones are perhaps...
They're a big step up.
Yeah, and they're not more normally edited. They're less frantic in the editing.
That's true. They kind of become just normally made films. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 6th one opens on a trap that I think we spoke about. It was the 2 people in like a cage opposite from each other. There's some weighing scales in the middle of the room. They've got a weird thing on their head that's going to drill into their head, killing them in a minute or two's time. And whoever scale weighs the most will be saved, and it won't kill them.
Yeah.
And the person whose scale weighs the least will die. And they've got a load of knives and things on a table in front of them to chop things off, basically, and chuck them down the chute. So, what would you do if you were in that trap?
Put something else on the scale, I guess?
Yeah, I'd first thing, take my clothes off. Take your clothes off, maybe. Ball up your t-shirt, roll that down there, try and get that down there. Second thing I'd try and have a wee. See if I could get that down the chute. Maybe have a shit. See if I can have a shit.
Yeah, but then while you're doing that, the other person's cutting off hunks of their flesh, and they're gonna live. So well, that's it. I don't know how easy it is to cut off a big ham hock off your side. I'm not convinced that's something you could do in sort of 60 seconds. And
well, this is the problem with all the traps at this point. It's like they literally have 60 seconds to do it. In the first film, Dr. Gordon had like a whole day to kill the other guy.
Exactly. And also I'd at least try to get the knives free and maybe use a knife to chop the chains on the other knives and that sort of thing, wedge them free and chuck them down there. Because they're going to weigh a fair bit. So there's 3 things that I would have tried before it came to chopping my limbs off. But
could you put? Yeah, you could actually put the implements down there.
They are attached to the table like a pen, a bank, but it's a crappy old wooden table. I don't think it would take much to. I'm pretty sure you could wedge one of them free or use the big meat cleaver to whack through the chain.
It's probably easier than cutting through bone, which is pretty hard.
Exactly. Anyway, it's a decent little opening trap.
Yeah, but they do bring her back in the next one. She's at the Jigsaw Survivors group. The main sort of story in this one is the life insurance guy going through tests and whatnot with his staff.
Jigsaw's pissed off that he was denied experimental medical treatment for his cancer on his insurance plan.
Yeah.
And he decides to take it out on the person who works at this life insurance company.
It was a health insurance company. If it was life insurance,
so,
wouldn't be a problem because he's going to die.
Course, so he decides to take it out on the guy who works at this health insurance company. Who...
Well, the thing is with this one, this was the one... even though it feels petty, at least it feels personal to Jigsaw, and that's why he would do it. It doesn't make me think Jigsaw's a good person who's on some sort of crusade, but at least it gives me an emotional compulsion that he would have to do it. But it makes it a bit too personal. Like, just this, like, for one thing, why is this one guy who works at the health insurance, like, meeting every patient personally to tell them that he's going to let them die? Like, what? Who has that sort of access to the health insurance?
I think these kind of companies specifically don't do that sort of thing. I don't think they actually talk to people. Yeah, you don't get to the head of the company, because then it opens up all sorts of moral problems.
And the big issue really is, like, at the end of the day, Jigsaw's problem isn't with these companies and the people just doing their job at the companies. It's with America's lack of healthcare and the political organizations and people lobbying against it. So he's not... I don't know if it's quite the right guy to pick on at the end of the day.
Maybe if he hadn't spent all his money renting out these huge warehouses, he would be able to afford to go to Norway and...
And that sets up Saw 8, where in the White House.
Oh, don't! I've got satire in my pitch.
Better leave it, man. Well, one of my notes here says Jigsaw hates health insurance companies. Communist.
I bet you Jigsaw hates communists, though. I bet if he was still alive, he'd be going on Twitter. And every time someone complains about a neo-Nazi, you go, "Communists killed just as many people as the Nazis." Me, 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 me. He's that sort of guy.
More. They killed more.
Yeah.
That's true, actually. If Jigsaw had Twitter, what would that...
Oh, he'd be
there
insufferable.
There are just too many people.
He'd get a blue tick, and he'd be just insufferable. So is it the first trap for this guy where he has to choose who lives and who dies?
Yes,
that's
the entire
secretary, who's a middle-aged diabetic woman, and yeah.
So I don't really know what Jigsaw's trying to say here. He's kind of trying to say there's more nuance to the value of human life than what you've done, but it feels as if he's... Paper. But the test is he has to choose between his receptionist, who is a mother with a family and an old woman, or an older woman, and a young man who works at the company who has no emotional ties to anyone, or so we're told, and therefore wouldn't be as missed if he were
Which
killed.
Is really unfair, because she's had like an extra 30 years on him to have these
I think you're meant to think, oh yeah, it's a no-brainer, keep the woman alive, she has a family. But
it's not what I thought.
Like you say, she's had an extra 30
years. As a young man with no emotional connections to anyone. So that's not what I thought.
You don't know what that man... Firstly, like, obviously, they're both as innocent and deserve to live, so unless it's just meant to be some weird thing to prove a point about nuance, you have to wait till he's at her age. He probably will settle down with a family and have kids and be as valid a member of society. And
she's done everything she's going to do now in life.
Do we know that this guy's like parents aren't going to be bothered about him and stuff? And
no, I think it's supposed to be saying, look, people are more than just a list of ailments on a piece of paper. There's more to it than that. They say, okay, yeah, look, in theory, she's got more medical problems, but she's also got more people relying on her. And so, but I think it's just supposed to be showing but it doesn't take into account the fact, like, any personal things. And then the next test as well, which is like all the people he works with, he has to choose who survives. He does know these people personally. So it doesn't take into account the fact, like, she's a bitch, I'm going to let her die. Fuck her. Whereas, that guy's all right. He always says hello in the morning. Like, the whole point of like the health insurance thing is that it's not personal, is it? The whole point of that is that you are just numbers on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it works. I don't know what point it's trying to prove. Like, the insurance system wouldn't exist without that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I like it. I like this one. I like the process he has to go through. It makes sense.
Well, this is my favourite up until this point in the series. My note says it might be the best of the franchise here.
Yeah, certainly since the second and third ones.
I'd take it over them even. This guy's redemption story, I think, is a good hook. It, like we said before, it feels like more thought through. and considered than the film's ever been before. The film's now settled into being much more professionally made and not just awful editing and badly acted, quite as badly acted. The writing,
but this guy, this central guy, who's the health insurance guy, he seems all right. Do you know what I mean? Like he's not, but he seems like a good TV actor rather than a shit TV actor.
Yeah. And all the sequences feel more well put together. Like there's some stupid characters at times, but they all work a bit more. It feels like they're a bit more inventive for the most part. It's completely let down by the B plot with boring policeman
stuff,
cop and Jigsaw, but they're all let down by that.
Another thing that does annoy me a bit, again, it's about the character developments. I think that for example, this insurance guy, his next test, or one of the next things he has to do, he has like 6 of the people who work for him, and he has to choose 2 that survive. And it's like, that's going to be really brutal, because you've literally got to look them in the eyes and go, I'm sorry, I'm not going to save you. And you don't know what order they're going to come in, so he saves 2 people, and then there's one guy still alive, and he knows he's going to die. And it just would have been like, let's have a bit more variation now, because they're all just screaming like, oh no, save me. Like have one of them going, do you know what? Let me go. I don't care.
That's what I was expecting. I was really expecting a character to go, you know what? Kill me. They deserve to live more than me.
Yeah,
and then maybe that's the one he lets live. Maybe not, but
yeah, exactly. But a bit of variation.
Because they were all just like, you fucking bitch, that fucking cunt. Yeah. It was all just very like, right, great.
I really liked it when he saves the last girl and the guy's like spinning one more turn around on the carousel and he knows he's going to die and he's like, oh well, that's great. And then he just like has a go at the guy. Yeah. I thought that was really funny.
I think the sequences in this film are just generally put together a lot better than the franchise up until this point. That's a good example of a sequence that works really well for what it is.
And how that insurance guy dies as well, like, is particularly gory and silly. He gets, like, hydrochloric acid injected into him?
Yeah, and I didn't quite like that. Again, it's because he's revealed that to this woman and her son, is like, oh, this is the guy who works at the health insurance company who didn't cover your dad's thing, your husband's surgery or whatever, and that's why he died. I mean, he had cancer, but, this is why he died. And like, they're immediately like, I don't know, even if someone close to me had died, I wouldn't necessarily go to the health insurance guy and go, oh, I've got an opportunity to murder you and I'm going to do it. Like, my husband died 3 to 4 months ago and I'm still so angry about it.
Exactly.
Like, in the heat of the moment, maybe you would do something dramatic, but I think anyone in that situation, or most people in that situation, would just go, well, no, obviously I'm not going to kill him. Like, I'm angry at the health insurance company, but I'm not going to kill this man who's probably got a wife and kids of his own. Like, what?
Exactly. And I think a lot of people might not stab themselves to save someone who did something like that. Maybe if the situation was you have to
kill him or yourself kind of situation.
Yeah, or like a lot of these traps where it's like you have to hold on to this really hot thing to save them or something like that. Maybe you wouldn't go the extra mile to save them. Maybe you wouldn't have the incentive if that you found that out. But there's a world of difference between that and actively
murdering someone.
Murdering them, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like someone puts a gun in your hand and says, you can shoot that guy if you want. Like, yeah, I could. Well, I'm not gonna.
There's just more continuing soap opera nonsense of like Jigsaw and his wife and Amanda
and that leads us on to the grand finale.
Yes.
In 3D.
The final chapter.
This one immediately, the opening, it felt very different because it was out in the open. It was daylight.
Yes.
It was after watching the other 6, it was like, oh my God, this is really out of place. This feels really weird.
This one feels so much different to the rest, like just stylistically. Like there's something about it. It feels more like Final Destination.
Yeah.
It feels so much more gore for gore's sake, very over-the-top cartoony gore, like this bright red blood.
Well, it's a 3D film, and every time someone dies, it reminds you that it's a 3D film, because it's the only justification for doing one of these films in 3D, really, is that you're going to have blood and guts flying at the screen. That's because they're otherwise very low-key, not a lot happening films, so...
But even to the extent of like this particular opening where it's like 2 guys and they're on either side of like a workshop thing with a buzzsaw in the middle, and a girl is above, and she's been like double dating them. That is so like, and the dialogue is so typical of like, you know, these kind of slasher films where these are normally the protagonists, like young teenagers, and
that
squabbling
really
about their
annoyed
petty
me.
problems and-
That opening scene. It's a
Oh,
cool,
I loved it.
Well, it's a really cool idea for an opening, taking this sort of thing to further extremes. But you have this crowd of people watching. One woman feebly attempts to smash the window by putting her briefcase against it rather lightly.
Yeah.
No concept of the corner of the window being the weak point that you want to go for. No concept of the corner of the briefcase being the strong point that you want to use to smash. And she's the only person out of a sea of hundreds watching who even tries. This is America. You're trying to tell me no one in that crowd has a gun on them, ready to go? I don't buy it.
Yeah.
Well, this scene was so terrible. I did genuinely assume that it was at some point it was going to kind of pull back, and someone goes, "All right, cut." And it was like the film within the
that's
film.
what it
making
feels
the film
like.
us all. Because it was because it was so out of place with the world we've created.
This feels as though it's setting up a different film to me. It feels as though it's setting up a film that's all about Jigsaw going public, you know, streaming his kills on the internet and engaging Twitter in what he's doing, and you know, like Black Mirror or something like that. It feels like they're going down a different route that it just doesn't follow through with, and it's a shame because I think it'd be quite interesting to see a game of Saw on a grand stage, like everyone in the world's involved and they're all big public murders that in public places, and I don't know, it just felt like wasted opportunity. But, you know, like I say, I think it's an enjoyable sequence, as stupid as it is.
Yeah. I was all for stupid. I really wanted it to embrace that. This is the film where we get Dr. Gordon coming back. Carrie Elwes returns.
Well, that's the very first scene, isn't it? With
Yes,
him
well, we
before.
follow him, what happened when he left the bathroom from the first film.
Doesn't this opening, very first scene sort of
Give away the ending.
Well, I say it doesn't mean anything until the very end. It just gives away the twist at the end because you're waiting for him to come back.
It's like, okay,
And-
something's going to turn up with him later on.
And also, who cares? Like, unless you like really love the first film.
And then we get introduced to the new character. And the way he's introduced, it's like he's telling a story of how, he was in a trap and he was survived.
Well, this is I like the idea of the protagonist. For anyone who hasn't seen it, he's selling himself as one of these. Oh, Jigsaw put me through this ordeal, and I've got a new lease on life. And he's like a self-help guru, motivational speaker. But then it turns out it's all a sham, and he's just lied and made it up, and he never went through any ordeal. He's just riding on the media hype surrounding Jigsaw, which I think is a really nice idea for a character, and you can buy that Jigsaw would be pissed off about it and what have you. I think maybe it's a bit silly that no one checked any police records.
How easy would
it
it be to blow that out of the water?
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't even have to be an investigative journalist, just anyone. In fact, you wouldn't even like, oh, well, I checked the newspaper on the day and there was no headline about it.
Yeah.
I've checked your medical records or whatever.
Ignoring that, I think it's a cool concept. I like that they then go to the group and they have that character just come out and just completely shoot down what these films have been doing up until now, which feels like it feels like a new voice coming through and just saying like, no, this is bullshit. The idea that everyone would be on side of Jigsaw and feel so happy and thankful for this is utter bollocks. You'd probably have PTSD. You would probably be resentful and hate the man, very understandably. You wouldn't. It just wouldn't work like that. Certainly not in so many of the characters. You might get one freak anomaly case where it goes that way, but
because she was a damaged sort of drug addict person anyway, and just looking for someone to support her.
Yeah, and maybe he looked a bit like a dad. But so then we have the sequence with all the neo-Nazis, and there's a big car, and it's going to kill them. And that feels like a completely, as I said before, that just feels so separate from this franchise, because for the first time, they are truly just awful human beings.
Yeah.
And
you're rooting for them to, be killed, really, because they are dreadful people.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wasn't exactly, but...
Yeah, I know you weren't.
Well, it's the first time that you can buy that, like, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world if he's going to pick off these guys because
Yeah. This one felt like we're supposed to really be enjoying the kills and like, you know, fist pumping the air and being like, yeah, go on, Jigsaw. Whereas in the other ones, there's always been a hint of sort of like, well, this is a bit sad actually. 'Cause this is a nice middle-aged woman who has a family.
And the trap's like really elaborate as well. It's all built around a car. So it's all built around one concept, but they're all going to die in different ways, which is quite... It feels like that's been tailored specifically to the 3D kill count.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think that's interesting. I think it's nice that Jigsaw's branching out and trying some new...
Well, it's a different Jigsaw, that's why.
Yeah.
It's Costas Mandalore. But I think to go back to the sort of TV show analogy, this does feel like, okay, this is the 2-part season finale.
Yeah.
Like, everything sort of culminates here with Jigsaw's
Special guest
wife getting
star,
killed.
the guy from the pilot.
Yes, exactly. He's literally in this for 3 scenes. I was really disappointed, actually. I thought that this film was going to be largely centered around him. And he's in the beginning, and then he pops up at the...
Not only is he only in it for 3 scenes, but it's utterly pointless and doesn't add anything other than like some very cheap glee of, oh, they've brought a guy back from the first film we haven't seen in the last 5 films. Other than that, it doesn't work for the character, what we saw of him in the first film. It doesn't, you don't buy it. It doesn't add anything really to the world
the
of
big
these
twist
films.
That he is
there's no
true disciple of Jigsaw.
There's no setup for it, so it's not a twist in the sense that you have any hope of piecing it together or there's any hint of it. They've just plucked it out of their arse, and it's shit. It really annoys me. But overall, you know what? The last film is my favourite.
Why?
Because I think tonally, it's more fun. I think it's more... The story of that guy and his journey through the trap room, I think, is definitely one of the stronger subplot or plots they've had with people going through the trap rooms out of all of them. I think his is one of the best that they've done. The traps are interesting, well crafted. Again, much like the last film, I think the director, I didn't realise it was a new person who came on and did the last 2, but I think they are much better at making films than the previous people. And the last film just feels largely like it knows what it is a bit more. So I just, it's my favourite. Significantly my favourite.
Disagree with that.
But then bear in mind, I really hate the first one.
I really went into the last one. I really wanted good things from it, and it just, especially after 6, was a significant step up again.
Yeah.
And if they were really going to throw everything at this one, it had the biggest budget. It was planned as the last installment. I was very excited. Cary Elwes was coming back, and it just dropped the ball completely. Anyone know anything about? I've not even seen a trailer for the new one.
Have you not?
Oh, I watched the trailer this morning before I did my thing, because basically it looks like they're just doing exactly the same thing again.
Well,
really?
I genuinely think the new one has a very good chance of being my favourite by a mile. I think this could end up being... It's most likely going to be another shit film, but it could be alright. So, firstly, the budget looks bigger. It looks like it's got much bigger open spaces and better sets and things, so that's nice. The dialogue looks dreadful. There's a moment in the trailer at the end where they try and have a little joke, and the creepy puppet rolls in on a tricycle laughing, and then a guy who's clearly meant to be funny goes, "Yeah, that's not creepy at all," and it's just like, great.
Yeah,
doesn't
look good.
A wit on that.
It looks like if they'd made Saw 8 immediately after Saw 7 the next year, it would have been exactly this film. It's like, there doesn't seem to be any difference whatsoever. Well, I got loads of ideas for how to continue this franchise. None of them very good.
Have you? Well, I've got about 4 pitches as well.
I can rattle off a few if you like. Yeah, I did.
Right.
I did one in a bit more detail, but I've got a few others that I could throw out.
Okay, so
great. Okay, then
give us your sequel pitch.
Okay, what about one where you've got it's a prequel and it's a young Jigsaw. He's in the 70s, backpacking around Europe, and gets caught in some sort of trap himself, and he manages to escape and survive.
Story.
Yeah, but that teaches him that he needs to stop being a hippie and do something worthwhile with his life, and so he starts opening medical centres or whatever he does. I don't know if you could tie that in with like a Hostel prequel as well, like do a crossover thing. I haven't really seen Hostel, but I know it's like just weird European people torturing people, right?
I think that's it.
So
Okay. What about a film called Saw's the Revenge? This time it's personal. In which a giant saw follows Danny Glover's wife to the Caribbean, and she's saved by Michael Caine.
If we're going off titles, I'm worried we're going to have one of the same ones here.
Go on then, you do one for us.
All right, I'm jumping ahead. This isn't my proper pitch, but it's one of my 4 pitches.
okay.
So this guy wakes up in a weird cave chained to a wall, and this voice starts saying he needs to like peel off his skin to find a code to deactivate this weaponry or something. Otherwise, an asteroid he's sent into space is going to collide with Earth, wiping out his species, and it's called Dinosaur.
Oh dear.
And I was thinking we could do it like that sitcom from the 90s.
Or with big rubbery
Yes.
dinosaur costumes.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
What about Jigsaw is dead, but he becomes a ghost, but then he has to deal with the ghosts of all his victims because they're all just hanging around. But then God like really likes his work because it's all about like wrath and petty spite. So he's like, oh, I like that. Do you want to work for me? And so he becomes like an angel of death kind of figure.
Brilliant.
Shall I rattle off another one of my...
Yeah, go on. Let's just go.
Yeah, go on. This is
Okay.
good. I love this.
I was thinking, have you ever seen Takashi's Castle?
Oh yes.
The wonderful Japanese import where 100 Japanese
Yes.
people basically have to jump and run through weird obstacles and people wearing stupid costumes and stuff. It's kind of like Gladiator and things like that. But anyway, I was thinking you just do a crossover with that. So like a Japanese game show buys the rights to Jigsaw or something, and they send 100 people into a big house like Saw 2, and they're just running, like hundreds of Japanese people just running at like different traps trying to get the keys and getting picked off.
Love
and
it.
at the end you've got like 1 or 2 who make it to the end.
I love the idea that they'll all come in like they do in Takeshi's Castle and they'll
Yeah,
all be like
punch the
smiling
air.
and wave at the camera. And like, yeah, let's go. And then they're going to run into a saw blade or something.
I've got a proper pitch as well. If you want to hear that.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, so my pitch is to go meta. You go full meta. So this, it begins with James Wan. He wakes up. He's in a trap or whatever. He's going to be our person going through the chase to answer for his crimes in bringing the Saw franchise to the world. So along the way, he has to come up against other people. So first of all, he meets Carrie Elwes, who's in some sort of trap, and the tape recorder would say, James, you were responsible for Carrie's shit acting in the first Saw film. Now you must act your way out of this. And so basically, Elwes
and he gets trapped in a big paper bag, and he just can't get out of it because he's not a good enough actor.
Okay, yeah, we can incorporate that into it. But basically, Elwes has got a heart monitor on him. They have to get his heart rate below, like, say, 100 beats per minute. But obviously he's panicking. He thinks he's going to die. So James Wan has to act. He has to convince Carrie Elwes that everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be cool. Even though it looks bad, everything's going to be fine. And so they have to drop
Even though we aren't paying you. Right,
yes.
it's all going to be fine.
But he only has like 60 seconds to do it or whatever. It doesn't work. Elwes is too busy being overly dramatic to listen. And so his heartbeat doesn't go down. And then the time runs out and his heart explodes, or the paper bag shrinks and crushes him, whatever. So
Crushed by a paper bag.
So then now he goes there, he meets the editor of the film. That's Kevin Greutert. I don't know how he's pronounce his name. Kevin Greutert, who now he's in a cage full of razor blades, and the tape says, Kevin, you like to cut films so much that people can't possibly watch them. Now you must cut yourself in order to survive. And so he has to cut himself the same number of cuts that are in Saw 4, but he only has like 3 minutes to do it. And so him and James Wan are trying to cut him up with about 4,000 cuts. Obviously they don't manage to do it in time. That's him dead as well. James Wan moves on. So next up he comes against Tobin Bell. James, by putting Tobin Bell in a cult film, you have doomed him to a retirement full of fan conventions. Now he must satisfy the army of fans or be crushed under the weight of popular demand. And so basically we have Tobin Bell, he's on He's on a giant seesaw, which I think it's about time we had a proper seesaw in one of these films.
Yeah.
He's on one side of the seesaw, and on the other side are a queue of autograph hunters, like nerdy losers.
I thought it was going to be like big rotor blades spinning round,
Well,
like
yeah.
razor sharp.
No, but the roof is slowly coming down. It basically has to get rid of the crowd of autograph hunters so that his side comes down and the roof doesn't crush him. So in order to do this, he has to sign 6x4 headshots for each one of them. And then once they got their thing, they leave. But the problem is that, he's trying to clear the entire queue, but they all want to have a picture. They want to ask him. They want to show him their ideas for a trap that he could use. They want to ask him about continuity errors.
He's got
in
arthritis.
the films. Yeah, he's 75 years old. Like,
So
he's
he's
just
got to
not that
work
fast
through
on
it.
his...
He's got to just work through the pain.
They're like going, oh, in Saw 2 when so and so goes up here, why does this happen? And he doesn't know. He's never even watched the films. He doesn't know what they're talking about. Anyway, so that doesn't work. He gets crushed. He gets crushed to death because he can't clear the people fast enough. I'll say the final one. Okay, finally, James Wan. He comes into a room. He hasn't saved anyone yet, but there we go. Hopefully, he's learned a moral lesson. And he's face to face with the man who brought him here, the killer, the guy who set this up. And he removes his hood to reveal that it's Lee Winnell, who Saul. That's the guy who was in the first film who wrote it. In case you don't know the name. And he said, he says he accuses James Wan of abandoning him and leaving him with responsibility of the Saw franchise, while he went on to become a much more successful filmmaker. And in order to make up for this and survive, James must give him the part of Aquaman. And now, so this is his ultimate test. Lee Winnell steps into one side of the contraption, and on the other side is Jason Momoa, who is the guy who's playing Aquaman.
Oh,
and then there's some sort of huge circular saw in between them. And James is like, Lee, you're not right for the part. You haven't got a six-pack for a start. We've already established Momoa in the role in one of the other films. Like, it's not going to happen, mate. But no, Winnell is adamant. He sets the contraption off and says, James, there's a simple choice. Do you pick your friend, the person who helped you create your career, or do you give up on friendship and go with commercial success? And, he thinks this is going to be some difficult moral choice, but obviously he's misjudged the situation because James Wan just immediately pulls the lever to kill Winnell. And then him and Momoa walk out and they go back to Hollywood and make Aquaman.
And it's met with lukewarm reviews.
Yes, as always. Okay, Calvin, give us your pitch.
Okay, we open the film, as all Saw films do, with someone in a container. And in this case, it's former Prime Minister of Great Britain, David Cameron.
You haven't caught up with...
You
haven't caught up yet, Calvin. We've moved on from Cameron. We all hate Theresa May now. Come on.
Yeah, I know, but I'm going to use this to... I'm using this to try and explain the true origin of Jigsaw's pig mask.
This is just the pre-credit.
This is why it's him.
Okay.
To catch up international listeners, former Prime Minister David Cameron was accused of doing sexual things with a pig's head.
University hijinks, we've all done it.
Anyway, so David Cameron is waking up in a cesspit, and as penance for his former crimes, Jigsaw is putting David Cameron through a series of grisly politically themed challenges. I have Dispatch Box, which is... a big box that is going to land on someone.
Well, how does he stop it?
I haven't thought that much through, actually.
Does he have to filibuster? He has to talk for 8 hours.
There's one which is first past the post. So he has to race someone, and they can be hindered in some way. They have their shins cut or something.
Can it be in a little go-kart? He has to race them round the track.
Anyway, the big trap climax would be a public referendum where the people of the UK would vote as to whether or not David Cameron should be eaten alive by pigs. Now, throughout flashbacks throughout the film, we're getting some more Jigsaw backstory, where we see that he once lived for a short while in England and ran a farm. Many years ago, he took...
It wasn't foot and mouth, was it?
No, he took great pride in rearing the animals, of which pigs were his favourite. But he had a very moral stance on, they are reared for slaughter. We are merely consuming the meat. We are not using them for fur or any kind of vanity sake. That sort of thing.
Pig fur, a beautiful pig fur coat.
And anyway, so Jigsaw's just out in either Oxford or Cambridge. Oh no, Eton. Sorry, he's out in Eton, and he's just having a nice time at the pub with some mates. And then he sees a load of posh knobheads rock up, and they're like, oh, blah blah blah, and all this kind of stuff. And they're doing some hazing ritual stuff outside. And then he steps out and sees a young David Cameron putting his "how do you do" in a pig's mouth, and then he swears revenge.
Because he disrespected the pig.
Yes. And so that's why he uses a pig mask as his assistant mask thing.
So what's the story behind the ventriloquist dummy thing?
Oh, well, that's for the next.
Oh, that's the next one.
Installment. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The public do decide to have Cameron eaten by pigs.
Okay.
So, Sol, do you want to round us off?
So, I want to do a little role playing.
Oh, brilliant! Oh, this is fun. Okay.
So the film would. This is just to act out what the film would be. The film would be a sequel to Calvin running the Brighouse Bed and Breakfast, and a sequel to Sol and Calvin Do America.
Which were parts of our Psycho and Beavis and Butthead's pictures.
Okay, so, all right, so, Alan.
Yes.
You wake up in a dark room, and you're chained up to the wall, and it's like a dirty toilet, like in Saw.
Okay, so I'm in my toilet.
Oh. Sad.
And
it just upsets me when you say things like that. I don't like to think of you living in such a way.
It's a dirty public toilet, and Calvin just happens to be there. There's nothing funny about that.
No, Calvin's chained to the wall opposite. So okay. you need to, what are you going to do?
Kill him. If these films have taught me anything, no, I'll, can I talk?
Yeah, let's say you're both awake. You both wake up.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
Okay.
Sorry, Alan, you go first.
I go, hi, Calvin. What are you doing here?
I don't know, Alan. I just woke up here.
Let's look for a tape.
All right, so you notice there's a TV screen on the wall.
I'm already suspicious about the location of this bathroom.
The TV's coming on. It's a mess. It's some stupid sock puppet or something.
I'd immediately go, Calvin, I think Sol's behind this.
All right, guys. I couldn't come up with a viable sequel for Saw to pitch on the podcast, so I've kidnapped you both to workshop some ideas. So you've got bombs attached to collars on your neck that are going to go off in an hour. Yeah, you need to find your way through a series of games I've set up.
Yay!
Oh God!
And in the final room, you'll find the keys to remove your collars, and you can go free until next week when we're doing Thor. And this is to teach you a lesson or something about valuing me as a friend or something.
Yeah.
You pair of... Your torture begins now as I leave the TV on, even though you're not watching anything. Because I think that'll wind Calvin up.
Oh, it really does. Oh, you know me too well.
Is it on mute? It's on mute, so even though we're really busy, should be getting on with things, you can't help but just drift off and watch it, regardless of what is on it.
The TV flashes with the message, "Look on your foot, but your is spelt with YOU''RE."
Is that just to annoy us, or is there
just
a
bit of
behind
torture?
That clue?
Is it a clue?
No, it's just a bit... Well,
It's just
look on
annoying.
your foot's a clue.
It's just being annoying. All right, well, I'd look on my foot, probably, the first thing I'd do.
Okay, Alan, you find a CD stuck to the bottom of your foot.
How did I not notice that? I don't have a CD player. Calvin, have you got a CD player over there?
No, I don't believe in physical media anymore.
Okay. What if it's a Blu-ray?
Oh yes, I forgot that my Blu-ray player can support CDs.
You still buy audio CDs anyway. You're always posting about the Unless you stopped, like, within the last month.
The last Lady Gaga album, you bought that.
How do you know?
Calvin, look under your foot.
Okay.
It's a CD player.
Oh, there's a CD player under his foot. It's there the whole time.
How did you not notice?
Look at that.
Okay, I'd throw a CD over to you.
Okay, I'll play it.
Hello, lads. Me again. We have fun, don't we? So now you're both chained to a special machine that I've built, Alan. You like Coca-Cola, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Drink a lot of it.
I'm kind of cut down, to be honest.
It's bad for your health. So to prove a point about that, or something, at the end of the message, the chain's going to begin pulling you into a vat of Coca-Cola hidden behind this wall that's now lifting up.
I'll be honest with you, that's the way I want to go. So.
Well, it won't kill you or anything. It's probably going to be quite fun, but when you get out, you're going to be really sticky, and the heat, like the lamps lighting the place, are going to dry you off, and it's just going to be unbearably sticky. So
that would be horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
That's unless you can unlock the cuffs around your necks, which you also need to do to progress to the next room.
Okay, so, I think we should do that. Let's unlock the cuffs.
The lock...
Okay, yeah.
The lock is set to pick up the specific frequency of your voice, Calvin.
Oh, right, okay.
And it's primed to release upon being taught how James Bond's just a code name. You have 3 minutes to make it understand.
Calvin, you're just going to have to say it. Just say it. It doesn't matter if you don't mean it. It doesn't understand the meaning behind it. It recognises the words. Come on, Calvin, just do it.
It's a code name. The evidence is all there. Like when George Lazenby says this never happened to the other fella, and the fact that they all change ages, but M stays the same from film to film. And
it releases. You're free to go to the next room.
Oh, that was tough. I think you should have just dunked in the Coke for that, really.
Well done, Calvin. You're a strong man. Okay, we go through the door.
Okay, so you see a room fairly bare. There's a kitchen area to your right, and a desk in the middle with a middle-aged man, Fred, who's a...
Fred?
Yeah, I'll tell you now, Fred's a bricklayer, just to give you a sense of who he is.
Okay, now, I think the challenge here is Calvin, you're going to have to talk to him without being patronising.
Oh my God.
We have to make him a cup of tea with lots of sugar in it.
The message is saying that Fred knows the combination of the padlock keeping the door to the next room closed. So you're both going to have to confront your fear of interacting with the working class.
Calvin, I think I should take care of this one.
I think this one is for you, yes. I did the last one, so I think it's only fair.
Yeah, I was raised with the working class.
Okay, I'll wait here. You go over and
I'll
talk
do my
to him.
broad accent. All right, Fred.
What do you want, sunshine?
I believe you got the code for door. Can we have it?
Oh, yeah.
Can we have it? We got to get through.
Oh, what's in it for me?
Hurry up, the timer's running down.
I don't know. What do you want, mate?
I'll give you the code if you make me experience just one moment of complete and utter happiness, bliss.
That might be up to you, Calvin.
I tell thee what, why don't you go over there, make me a cup of tea, lad, and that skinny one over there, you go find my DVD, my favourite film, in that pile of DVDs, and put it on for me, and I'll have a nice cuppa with a film.
Oh, what's your favourite film?
Well, can't you tell? I'm a bricklayer.
Okay. It could be Brick.
Yeah.
It could
My favourite film's 2005's Brick with
I thought it was going to be Sex
Joseph
Lives of the
Gordon-Levitt.
Potato Men.
Oh, I don't like that, sunshine. Oh, you're going to have to be sharpish now.
Oh,
all right, I'm making a cup of tea.
Slight.
I mean,
I've got Brick.
The kettle's on. It's going to take about 2.5 minutes to boil. I've got 8 sugars here. I think that's going to be enough.
Yeah.
I am going to have to leave the tea bag in there for about 8 minutes, though. Have we got time for that? I've got to really get this strong. I'll tell you what, we'll save time. I've put 4 tea bags in. Okay, right. I've made a cup of tea.
Oh, it's no good, lad. No, you've got to put the milk in first.
No, you don't.
Oh my God, it's a trick. That's no real working class man. That's Sol in a disguise.
Wait a minute. It was Sol all along.
Make me another one, you cunt.
All right, I've made you a cup of tea. Here's a biscuit. It's a digestive. It's a man's biscuit.
Oh, that's a lovely brew. Now, where's my film? My accent's changed.
Oh, here.
Where am I from?
Nobody knows.
No, well, you see, I'm opening up the box now, and inside this box of 2005's Brick, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt, directed by Ryan Johnson, it appears to be a copy of Good Burger, the Keenan and Kel vehicle.
Right?
That's a clue? It's a clue or something.
So yeah, I would suggest you go and find the Good Burger box, and maybe it's in there instead.
Okay.
Okay, I found the Good Burger box. I've opened it.
Oh no, it's got a copy of Sherlock Bones' Undercover Dog inside.
Oh, no.
It appears as though some maniacal genius has swapped all the DVDs around and put them in the wrong box.
Okay, Calvin, we have to open all the boxes quickly. We're just looking for Brick. Okay, look, this one. Okay. Ernest Goes to Camp. That's no good. Oh, God. What's this one? The Shallows. Why have they got that one? It seems out of place. God.
Okay, you're making your way through. There's lesbian vampire killers in there.
I'm getting closer. I found Looper. Also directed by Rian Johnson. I found a pirated version of Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Okay, I found it. Here it is. It was
inside Eddie Murphy's The Haunted Mansion. Oh, that's great, Sunshine. There you go. Code is 1.
Should have tried that. Okay, I'll put a 1 into the thing. Beep. There we go. It opened.
All right. Now we're gonna skip through the next few rooms in a montage.
Okay, good.
Okay.
There's a room where you have to read something, but there's someone reading over your shoulder. There's a room where there's just like a couple just like getting off with each other in public, and it's really awkward, and you have to like sit next to them. And you make your way to the last room. So well done, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I'm impressed with your skill and vigor.
Yes.
The test where you have to do the washing, only to find there was a tissue in the pocket of the trousers that ruins it all, was particularly difficult. You did well there. Only one task remains,
right.
And then you are free. So yeah, what are you going to do? Look around the room. There's a box.
What have we found?
There's a box marked Invisalign.
Oh no! Oh no! You mean the incredibly wonderful dental company who have revolutionized my teeth?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, we open the box.
Inside it is an envelope labelled Calvin.
I open the envelope.
Inside it is an X-ray clearly showing a key wedged between Calvin's 2 front teeth that Sol obviously snuck into the gap back when it was big enough, and now it's been fixed. It's closed around the key. And there's also an IKEA toolbox on the floor.
Okay, what's in the toolbox then?
All right, you've got a screwdriver with some different attachments, some pliers, a big hammer.
Sorry, what? So we have to get the key out from between my teeth?
Well, I don't know. What's the key for?
The key is to presumably open the final, the collars around your neck. And
what happens if we don't get the key?
Bombs go off.
We both die.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's do this then.
What are you going to do, Calvin? I'm not getting involved.
No, you're going to have to...
If you want to pull your teeth out, that's all to you, but I can't. I'm weird about teeth. I'm not getting involved with that.
No, I can't do it. I need someone else to wield the hammer.
I'm happy to die. I'm all right. Let's just let go. Let's hold each other while we die.
No. I can just get them put back in later on. It'll be like... It looks really easy in Human Centipede 2 when they do it.
No, we died.
Oh.
The end.
Oh, well.
Isn't there a point in one of these films where a guy pulls his teeth out and it's got writing on it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we died. That's a shame. But
That's an ending to the film, isn't
But then, who will Saul do the podcast with?
it? Fred. Hello, it's me, Fred. This week we're doing Brick. It's my choice.
Oh, not a brick again, Fred.
Hello, it's me, Fred again. Thank you for listening to this week's Diminishing Returns, featuring me, Fred, from now on. I'm the new host. No more Alan and Calvin. They're both dead, so if you don't like that, go complain in reviews on iTunes and follow on Facebook and Twitter for updates about me hosting new Diminishing Returns. Next week, we're doing Brick, followed by Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Bricky Bobby, Brick and Morty, Bricky and the Flash, Philip K. Brick's Electric Dreams, Brickass, The Big Brick, Bricking and Screaming, John Brick, Brick Boxer, The Girl Who Bricked the Hornet's Nest, Brick or Treat, The Bricker Man, the 1973 version, The Bricker Man, the remake starring Brickolis Cage, Robot Brickin', The Spider Brick Chronicles, Bricky Christina Barcelona, The Hot Brick, Brick and Run, Good Brick, The Brick of It, The Brick Van Dyke Show, Bricknick at Hanging Rock, Bricky Mouse Clubhouse, The Brick and the Dead, and Pet Cemetery. See you next week!